Welcome to the Following Films podcast. Today we're diving deep into the world of short films with two incredibly talented filmmakers. Up first, we have the esteemed producer turned director Richard J. Bosner, whose latest project, Devotee, is a gripping psychological thriller that will stick with you for days. With a background producing critically acclaimed films like Fruitvale Station and Black Bear, Bosner has assembled a dream team for Devotee, including breakout child star Grant Feely and a post-production crew fresh off Megalopolis. We're also joined by director Nicholas Santos to discuss his haunting short film Strange Creatures, a tale of grief and longing. The film stars Quinn Jackson and Sean Michael Wilkinson, and the film is as emotional as it is terrifying. Both Devotee and Strange Creatures are making their world premieres at Hollyshorts this weekend. For more information about both films, including how to stream them, go to hollyshorts.com. Hope you enjoy the show. Thanks. Well, Great. It's good to see you again, Richard. How have you been, man?
I've been good. Thank you. How have you been?
Been really good, really good. I was so excited when I saw that you were behind the camera on this one, that you were directing this one. So I was really excited to see it. And then even more so that the movie's good. So you made a hell of a film here, man. I really enjoyed it. So what I assume this was always the goal, to get behind the camera at some point. So what made you decide to take the plunge now?
Well, life, you kind of got to follow what the universe brings you. It's funny because, I went to school and obviously I wanted to direct. I've wanted to direct my whole life. And, I've always had this kind of gift for bringing people together, though. So producing was kind of a natural skill set. And, I guess one of the things was right around the time Fruitvale happened, I had a decision to make, which was, do I follow this track of producing, which is leading me in a really wonderful direction, or do I kind of put that all aside and go into directing like hard? And I was like, this seems too good to just pass up. So I was like, all right, universe, I'll follow you the way you want me to go. And I went the producing road. So yeah.
And now you've decided to take the plunge, go back to the original plan, as it were. What was it that you learned in between that time of when you initially wanted to go and you kind of took that little bit of detour? Was it a good thing that you took that time to learn more about how these things work? Because, man, nobody understands how a film's put together better than a producer.
Yeah, honestly, yes. I'm really glad that this was the road I chose to do. Now understanding really the total ins and outs of everything that goes into filmmaking, from conception to distribution to like years later residuals and things that you have to deal with. It's been a blessing, honestly, that was what I got to do and work with so many incredible filmmakers and see what works and what doesn't work. So yeah.
And was it always a genre film that you wanted to start with? Did you want to go into horror thriller space, or?
Yes, so much. And I'm very grateful that I've been doing so many prestige indies and Sundancey things. Wonderful. But my heart really lies in this genre of horror and thriller. I grew up watching literally Alfred Hitchcock movies because my parents
see above your head the Rope poster. So yeah.
Yeah, Rope, it's not even just like one of those like made up, I really loved Alfred Hitchcock as a kid. Yeah. And my parents didn't want me to watch stuff that was like hard R, at that time. So it was like, well, I guess this was what I was watching, and it stuck with me. So
Rope specifically is one of those ones that's so subversive. If you think about when that was made and what's going on in it, it's just like, holy shit, what did people think of this at the time? Did it go above their heads? Did they get it? So yeah, because it's just the content of that film. It's so wonderful. It's just I think it's one of the underrated Hitchcock films. They think of it as the gag more than the actual content. So
totally, so many layers to it beyond just like the filmmaking style he did with the subtext of everything. Yes. And I really, really love that movie. So
I mean, it's clearly, to me, it's a queer film made at this time, and but it's not overtly stated, but it's right there. I mean, this isn't even, it's text, it's not subtext. So
I know that, and that's why it's so great, and it's like, how the heck did they do that? I mean, it's wonderful. Yeah.
Well, we're almost to that point now. We've almost come that far where you can just have that not be the focus of the film, where it
Totally.
just is a thing. It's just something that is, and you don't need to call it out or address it. It's just a part of, a character at this point. It's not a big deal. And it's kind of like, that's the way it was told in that film. And I really appreciate that about it.
Yeah, me too, as well.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you decided to make a cult film in addition
Yes.
to that. And you've made a film that is only 6 minutes and change long, but it's
Right.
something that feels like there is an entire film around this. I feel the world beyond this. It feels almost like we were just either dropped into, I can't tell if this is the first act of the film, this is pre-credits, or if this is something that is the finale of the film. So is there a much larger story here that you're telling?
Yeah, well, you're dead on. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. This is a cold open of a movie that I wrote during the pandemic called Devoted, which we're currently out casting right now. Mary Vernew is our casting director. We're putting cast and everything together for hopefully later this year. And yeah, I mean, basically, I wrote this, and right after I wrote it, I wanted to start really getting into putting it together, but we had a strike. So it was like, well, this is not going to work. And the thing about it is, I mean, I always try to look at these times where, people have lulls and, there have been strikes before and stuff, but like, I hate wasting time in the
Yeah.
filmmaking sense. So I was like, all right, look, there's a kid in this scene. It's the summer. All of my amazing filmmaker friends are available, and SAG was letting people still make short films under the short film agreement,
Hmm.
during that time. So I was like, we're gonna do it. So we did. We got everybody, like the most amazing crew together, to just shoot over a weekend, and put this together. And I mean, I was thrilled to work with all these people that are my close friends, and just to really, get behind the camera and put this together. So
Well, it definitely looks like something that is a piece of a larger film. It doesn't feel like this is kind of, you see films that are just a proof of concept, and this doesn't feel like that. This does feel like the movie should keep going from this.
yeah.
It feels like it could look exactly like this. It could be cast like this, and performances feel on point. The look feels really strong here. So, I think you're punching about above your weight class with this one.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's one of those things with short films too. And if kind of you look at like Whiplash or something, they did
Hmm.
the same
Yeah.
thing with a short film. And I always think that like if you're going to do a short film, it doesn't serve you to like, make a movie that's less than the feature is going to be.
Yeah.
It has to be on the same level. You can't tell people, oh, the movie's going to be amazing, but then it's like this little thing. It's got to be that thing that really hits home and is like, okay, I get it. I get what you're going to do. So that was really what we tried, and all the way to going to, Skywalker Sound doing the audio and Company 3 doing the color. Like we really wanted to flesh it out and make it look totally like what it's going to be. So
And so the Jonestown story, and you have the reference to that, you have Manson and these other images that you see in this. Is that something you're drawing inspiration from, the idea of these cults in this and large? I don't know how much you can give away as far as the larger story here, but it is something that is in this.
exactly. Yeah. Well, this short, obviously, if you're looking at what's going on in it, like it's taking place in the mid 90s,
Yeah.
it's dial up internet, all those things. So any of the stuff that our protagonist is researching it all predates that time, basically. So it is playing into the idea of the cults and everything that, came Manson and Jonestown and everything like that. So, and that's about as much as I can say, but yes.
Yeah, I don't want to
Yeah.
give this away because this is something that it's a short, and it's something that I think the less you know about it going in, the better, because it's one of those things that it is a punch. It's a gut punch when this gets to where it's going. I'll say this much: there's a moment with a knife at the table. There's a little cut that happens here, and I, I was just I was taken aback by it. It was something I didn't see that coming at that moment, even though it's all being telegraphed, and I know this is where it's going. They'll pull the punch back here some way, but no, absolutely not.
Good.
So,
Well, I'm glad it got you.
well, can you talk about the idea of kind of structuring this for a short, though? Because when this plays in a theater, one of the things I love about short films is you go in and you really have no idea what you're getting into. That it could be a minute long, it could be 23 minutes long. You could have something in this whole range of things. And this is something that does feel like it's building, 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 and the rug is kind of pulled out from under you. And I think that's one of the magic tricks of this thing that gives it so much impact.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It's definitely, I wanted it to play like basically like a James Bond opening,
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
like it's like and I love, especially, I mean, it's so hard, where movies are going through such a new like evolution and new creation of like how we like what we take in, how we take it, and you really got to hook people quick, to get them invested. I mean, these slower meandering openings, I think it's harder, especially for the younger generation, to like be like, all right, like when is this starting? Really.
Maybe I'll push
Yeah,
back a little bit on that. I think the
yeah,
younger
yeah.
generation is actually more open to that. If you look at something like Skinamarink, that
True.
is, they have this lo-fi horror that is very meandering, and I think they have this incredible tolerance that maybe people my age don't have, and that maybe
It's true.
millennials don't have. But like my 14-year-old son, he watches stuff that I'm like, did it ever start? And so he
Right, right.
loves it. It doesn't feel like there was ever a story there, and so I think they have an
Well,
incredible amount of patience.
that's true. My 15-year-old niece is watching like cats crawl out of a paper bag on YouTube. So like, I don't know. I mean, there's, I don't know.
You just have to guess, make something that you would want to
Yeah,
see.
exactly. Yeah. And that's what I was like, really like, this is something I want to see, and really coming up with the concept and everything too. Like, what if I were going to go, pay to see a horror movie? Like, what would I want to see? And that's just what I wrote. So, yeah.
So when will you be filming the feature version of this? When do you think you'll get that started?
Well, it's already, we're in the process of like developing it and everything right now, like packaging it, putting it all together. So, hopefully sometime soon. I mean, again, it's a funky time in the film
Yeah.
industry, but and all movies have like their own evolution, of how they come together and whatnot. I've had movies come together in 6 months. I've had movies take 12 years.
Yeah,
So,
true.
I don't know.
Well, there's probably never been a better time for independent horror film.
Exactly.
Right now when you have stuff like Violent Nature,
Yeah.
jumping into the top 10 and doing really well, and there's another patient film that really does, take its time. That yeah, it makes me feel good about
Yeah.
kind of the future of theaters and the stuff that I love because I'm a big genre guy. Was speaking of which, your choice of font in this film is very intentional. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the font was so important to me. The credits were so important. There's a guy that I normally use that does all my titling in New York, but he wasn't available, so I was like, how am I gonna do this? So, I literally I was like scrolling through Instagram, being like, who's good at this stuff? And I found this great guy, Dylan Dawson, who I was like, your stuff is amazing. I just reached out to him and was like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. And he just hit it spot on. We worked together. He was so collaborative, didn't know him from Adam. And he's my new guy. I mean, he did amazing.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's very few interviews that I've had in the 10 years that I've been doing this where I ask about the font of the, the title cards, and yeah. So you did something special here. You did a great job. It's something that is clearly setting the stage for what this is. Just even by the intro. By the time you get, because it's bookended with these credits, and then, but yeah, you know what you're in for here. I think by those title cards.
Yeah, and it's, I really wanted it when the movie ends too, that you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
want more. I want more. Like, I want to know what the hell this all
Well,
was about. Yeah.
Well, that's why you put the title at the end, that it does have that cold opening feel. And that's where now we're ready to hear what the story was, because we just were dropped into this world without, I mean, a little bit of context, but not really too much. You get the idea of what's going on, but how did they get there? Where are they going from here? Whose story is this? We have no clue at this
No,
point.
that's it. That's it. Just a taste.
And
So,
so are you a short story person? Do you enjoy like short fiction, horror, that kind of stuff?
I do. I mean, I love that kind of stuff. I loved like all the Alfred Hitchcock Presents and the Twilight
Yeah.
Zone things. I mean, those are great. I mean, I think short stories are wonderful, and I think they're really making a comeback now too. I mean, honestly, even when I was young, this is so crazy. I used to listen on cassette tape the like old teleplays from like, the
Yeah.
40s and 50s and be like, oh, these are great. I'd stay home sick and like be listening to these things like I'm 90 years old. It was like I thought they were so intriguing, you know? So
Oh yeah, I mean, there was a point, there was an AM station when I was a kid, or I guess I was driving, um, and they would play The Shadow and things like that at night, and I would listen to those, and it was something that was so oddly compelling about it that it was in this other world, and it is, yeah. So that's sort of those little stories like that that you would get that were really complete narratives. They had an ongoing story, but it was a full arc in just a few minutes that they would tell with these, and they were wonderful. Just yeah,
yeah.
it really it touches on that kind of black box theater itch that I think I've had since I was a kid, that it
Yeah.
scratches that. And I think that short films kind of play into a similar way where you don't have to have a complete narrative. You can have a joke, you can have a punchline, you can have a setup, and you can release tension, and that's enough. And that's all it has to be.
Totally.
You don't have to have three acts and a complete, story here. And there's something that's really wonderful about the form that you can just do that one thing.
And I think that's where short form really works wonderfully when you play a short film kind of like a joke,
Yeah.
like beginning, middle, and end. It's, short form, in my opinion, just it doesn't work as well when you're trying to cram in like a million different storylines and people where like it is a mini feature, because it's not. It's just a moment,
Yeah.
or a snippet. So
I
yeah.
mean, it is a joke. You're just basically having the setup and punchline. And that's really it's the release of tension. And that's why I think that for me, horror films are something that work so well
Yeah.
in shorts. I mean, I have a bias. I have a very strong bias to horror and genre anyway, but I do feel like the horror block when I go to festivals is always my favorite piece.
Oh, absolutely. And honestly, even of all the movies I've made, I mean, doing the horror films I've done, I've only done two, but like they were the best. And the people I met on the first one, which was just like, oh my God, I don't know, like over a decade ago, those
Mm,
people are some of my closest friends and the closest filmmakers in my filmmaker family that have like come through all of these productions with me. It's pretty amazing. So
it's for people that are outside that don't really follow the horror world and aren't that close to it. I think people would be surprised by how warm the horror community is, by the fans, by the creators. There's a very, it's kind of we were all the oddballs in the high school that really didn't necessarily have that. At least that's what it feels like to me. It feels like people that found their tribe to some degree.
absolutely, absolutely. And to me, it's honestly one of my favorite things about, filmmaking is doing those genre films, because it is such a inclusive environment. It's so like people are so welcoming, and there's a bit of a heaviness that is taken off when you're doing a horror movie, as opposed to doing something that's like a really heavy drama that has some socially important message that you're trying to get out there. It just kind of, there's a levity, and people will be so surprised, like the kindness that is comes from the people in the horror world. You don't expect it, but it's there,
Well,
So
it's, people in the horror community, horror fans are very forgiving. If
yeah,
they have one thing they can hang their hat on, they're usually okay with it. They might complain about things here and there, but for the most part, go look through that wall of movies back there. There's a ton of stuff that I know is not traditionally a great film, but I love it with all of
it's
my
it.
heart. I know that some of the performances might be off. You can tell that they were changing film stocks way too often. They didn't really match things. The color correction was horrible on it. The sound isn't there, but there's one thing in there that you can really lean into. And yeah, so there's this, I think, that lightness that you're talking about, that you can kind of just make something from the heart,
Yeah.
and that if you're doing that, that comes through. If you make something with cynicism, where you're just trying to, I'm making a horror film because I know that if that's something that somebody's going to buy and that'll let me make the next thing down the road, if that's all it is, I think that comes through more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of that too, and you can feel it too when you watch a film. So
I,
absolutely.
I don't know how to pinpoint it, but it's something. I can't say like it's this thing, but there's just something there, like you weren't into it. You
All
weren't,
right.
but there's something
Yep.
that's kind of crappy that you feel like it's, and I don't know if it's that, the being a big fan of John Waters movies when I was a kid, that it's just like these are people that are just putting on a play on the weekend.
It's
And it's just that kind of,
exactly.
it has that vibe that's just infectious to me.
It's totally true. And, that's the kind of upbringing I had too. My parents were both in the theater and
Yeah.
they were actors, directors. I spent so many weekends at like set constructions or doing my homework in an auditorium, watching my parents direct people or, and all of those people, my parents are much older now and they're still in their lives, those people that like were just like painting walls and lifting flats or
Yeah.
doing lighting. I mean, so it's something that is always stuck with me. The community of artistic people it's a really powerful thing, and it's wonderful to have people like that in your life, lifelong friends. So
Oh, those are the people I'm surrounded with. It's tough for me to relate to people in a very deep way that don't have some creative spark. I don't care what it is. You don't have to necessarily be creating all the time. It doesn't have to be your life's work, but somebody that doesn't appreciate it, somebody that, what kind of music do you listen to? I don't really like music. Okay. What's your favorite film? I don't really, I watch reality TV. That's about it. Just something I can put
right.
on in the background. What do you read? And you go through all these things. And if they don't have some love for creativity, it's tough for me to find the entry point with those people. And that's probably my shortcoming, but it is something that's tough for me.
Yeah, I can totally understand that for sure. It's it's definitely it's an important thing for me too when connecting with friends and new people in my life. So yeah.
So is there a film that you have that's a litmus test? If somebody that is a new friend, somebody that you're bringing in, something you would say, I'm going to show you this film, and if you don't get it, I'm not sure if we can hang.
Oh, I mean, no, I mean, I'm totally open to, I
Of
mean,
course.
you remember people, like a lot of people, I was thinking about this the other day, like certain friends from the past and stuff that, like what their favorite movies are and kind of how I connect with them, whether
Hmm.
it's like, their favorite movie was like Lord of the Rings or The Shining or what, it's just like, it's a different vibe I get from them. And, I think it's a fascinating thing, and I mean, it's like there are so many movies that are put out there, and breaking through the noise is such a. I mean, that's even harder than making the movie half the
Yeah.
time. How do you can make a great movie, but how do you break through the noise? And um, but I mean, in terms of like different films, like for me, I just like if people haven't seen certain movies and they say like, "Oh, I'm a fan of," like again, like horror, and I've never
Yeah.
seen like The Exorcist or I've never seen The
Sure.
Shining, or it's like, wait, what? So then I have to
We
like watch the movie, and I just watch them.
of course.
Even watch the movie. It's like I love seeing, especially with horror. I used to do this in high school. I would like go see a scary movie on my own, then take all my friends that were totally terrified, and I'd watch their faces as they'd scream and have a great time.
The
It's great.
number of times my wife has said, "Don't just stop watching me while we're watching the movie," that I'm just staring at her waiting for the moment. It's telegraphing what's going to happen. So she knows something is around the corner because I'm looking at her to see the response when the thing happens. But yeah, I actually agree with you on I don't care what the thing is. It's the passion for it that I'm looking for. And in fact, sometimes somebody will have passion for something that I don't really care for that'll make me reevaluate something, that'll make me go back and give it a second look, or pick up that book again because maybe I missed something, or it helps me to get to know them by what is that thing they're connecting with that I'm missing. And it's just fascinating sometimes what are the things that really matter to people and that are they connect deeply with, and it's just a wonderful way to get to know people.
It is. It is, and all art is like that. So it's really,
Yeah.
and I love, figuring out what really inspires other people, because then you can take from that, So
Absolutely. And so then what is going to be the next step for you? What are you going to do after this? You're working on the progress of this. Do you think you'll do another short, something that you could do in the meantime, something that could come together a little bit quicker, or something along?
well,
Because Richard, I'm a fan now. I liked you before as a producer, but now I want more movies from you because I enjoyed
well,
this a lot.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, well, this is the focus right now, and we are going really strong. I'm
Good.
hoping that we'll be able to announce some stuff really soon.
Okay.
So I'm working on that. I mean, I always have movies that I'm producing regardless. So I have a couple films that are coming up that I'm putting together. But this is really the focus at the moment, really doing that and really leaning into this whole horror, thriller universe. That's really what I love. So Yeah.
Good. We need more people making things like this that are coming from that place that you're coming from. Because it's there. To me, it's just horror is my favorite thing to see in a theater, to go into a dark room full of strangers and watch that together. It's the things that, the comedy and, horror, very similar in my mind. That reaction to it, they work in pretty much the exact same playing field. We don't see very many comedies these days. And I think that's something that's sorely missing from the theatrical experience. But while we have horror, we need, I'm pretty excited that.
Yeah, I'm excited too. So yeah, no, thank you for I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm just excited to keep going with this and going with the feature. So it should be great. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah,
Well, I got one last question for you.
definitely.
Is there a horror film you've seen this year that's knocked your hair back? What's been one that's just made you've been really impressed with?
Oh, this year, I can't remember when this year started. Was Talk to Me this year or last year?
That was last year.
That was great.
I think
did
that was
love
last year. Yeah, last year. I'm
it. Was
pretty
it
sure.
right? I don't
Yeah,
know. Talk to Me was great. I really did
pretty
enjoy
amazing.
it. And this year, I wouldn't say there's any that this year so far that have totally blown me away yet. But Talk to Me definitely did when I saw that. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was strong.
It's a great film. It's really, really something special. And
Yeah,
again, it's one of those ones that what we were talking about before with kind of the rope thing, where there's elements to this that it just is. And I really love that about that film. It's one of those little angles that I think that really people missed, that I really loved, that it was just a part of the film and it was just a fabric and never touched on. And God damn it makes me feel good about the world. There's a lot of negative things right now that are easy to get hung up on, especially with things like that. But that element of it, that it's never
absolutely.
discussed, I was like, fuck, thank God. That's
Great.
that's
I
good.
know. It really is amazing. Yeah. So I'm just digging where the whole kind of there is this resurgence and this love for horror right now. So I'm
Yeah,
so excited to see where that goes and what all different kinds of filmmakers are doing, because I think I'm starting to really feel the passion from other people too, from other filmmakers, and I think that's exciting.
that's
So
great. Yeah.
yeah.
And I can't wait for people to see this. So
Well, thank you.
you're going to be playing at the Hollyshorts Festival, correct?
We are, yeah. We premiere there on the 9th at 10 p.m. in the horror block, and then we got some other festivals coming up and everything too. So there'll be plenty of places for people to see it. Yeah.
Where's the best way to where should I send people to follow your work in this film online so that they can make sure they get a chance to see it? Because I'm sad I'm not going to be in LA this weekend to check out the film, because I would love to see this with an audience, man.
Thank you. Yeah, no, they can go to my Instagram, which is at Rick Bosner, or my website, which is bluecreekpictures.com. That's my production company, and you can get all the info there on everything coming up. So
That's awesome. Thank you so much again for taking the time to do this today. Congrats on the film. You got something special here, man. And
thank you, Chris.
I hope it's not another 4 years before I get to see you again.
No. We'll make it way sooner than that.
Okay. Awesome.
All right, Chris. Take care.
Thank you so
Yep.
much.
Yep.
Bye-bye. Today's episode of the Following Films podcast is brought to you by Bookmans. Are your shelves groaning under the weight of unread novels and forgotten movies? Does your attic hold a secret collection of vinyl waiting to be rediscovered? At Bookmans Entertainment Exchange, Arizona's favorite haven for pre-loved treasures, they turn your clutter into cash or store credit. But Bookmans is far more than a used bookstore. Bookmans is a cinematic journey. You can relive your favorite films or discover hidden cinematic gems. They have an extensive DVD and Blu-ray collection that offers something for every movie buff, from cult classics to box office hits. Bookmans is a symphony of sound. Dust off your headphones and get lost in the world of music. They offer a vast selection of CD and vinyl records, encompassing everything from classic rock to contemporary pop and everything in between. Bookmans is a gamer's paradise. You can level up your gaming experience with their diverse collection of used video games. From retro consoles to the latest releases, you'll find everything you need to conquer virtual worlds at fantastic pre-owned prices. Bookmans is the home for the curious. If you're looking for that unique piece to add a touch of personality to your space, explore their curated selection of home goods, including vintage finds, decorative items, and even musical instruments. Bookmans is also, goes without saying, a universe of books. From timeless classics to the latest bestsellers, their meticulously curated selection caters to every genre and interest. Whether you're a sci-fi fanatic or a history buff, they have the perfect book to ignite your imagination. Don't let your pre-loved items gather dust. Bookman's offers a hassle-free way to give them a second life. Just go ahead and bring in your used books, movies, music, video games, and even some home goods, and their friendly staff will assess their value. You can choose to receive cash on the spot or store credit to explore their incredible selection. And when you choose Bookman's, you'll know that you're supporting local. They're a proudly locally owned, operated business, supporting the Arizona community. They have an unbeatable selection with a vast array of used media, and you'll always find something new and exciting to discover. And it's eco-friendly. By shopping pre-loved, you're giving items a second life and reducing your environmental footprint. And it's always a great value, because Bookman's offers competitive prices that ensure you get the best deal on your favorite books, movies, and music. Make sure you visit Bookman's today, if you're ready to embark on a journey of discovery. Head to your local Bookman's Entertainment Exchange, browse their shelves, unearth a hidden gem, and turn your unused items into cash or store credit. And remember, Bookman's has your cool covered. Hope you enjoy the rest of the show. Thanks. Hey, Nicholas, how are you?
How's it going?
Good. Thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to do this, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for watching the film.
No, I've watched it twice now. I watched it, and then immediately afterwards, I needed to make sure that I watched it with my wife. Because I knew that she would get a kick out of it, and it absolutely worked. So
Nice.
It's pretty rare that at 2:00 in the afternoon you can make somebody jump, but you got us, you got me twice, and you got her twice at the same spot. So well done.
Awesome.
So talk a little bit about the where this film came from. Where would in films like this, a short film especially, I don't want to give it away because there's a lot of fun is just finding out what this thing is. But how much can you talk about this film without spoiling it? It's only 6 minutes, so.
Yeah. Well, it's about a young woman desperate to see her brother again, so she returns to the site of his death, and things don't go as she plans.
It's in the horror shorts section,
Yeah.
so something happens.
The origins, unfortunately, I've been trying to figure out a happier way to talk about this, but my brother passed away 7 years ago.
Okay.
And I had this bad dream one night. I think it's based on the fact that I still have his phone number in my cell phone. So I had a dream once was getting a call from him, and I answered, and it wasn't him. And I've been wanting to make, a lot of my work has been horror, but it's been comedic based.
Sure.
So I wanted to make something actually scary, and I knew I could do it. And I love jump scares, and I love when they're done correctly and not cheaply. And I hate when people say that they're cheap, because if you actually do them right, they can be very effective and very enjoyable. And as long as there's that atmosphere and actual dread that you're creating. So I wanted to kind of make something that encapsulated all that. And I wanted to try to take a story that was personal, but also simple.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's kind of how the short film came about.
Well, I agree with you in that jump scares can be effective when done properly. When they're leaned in too much, that's when they cheapen, I think. If they're done, if you look at The Changeling, a ball rolling down the hallway, that is one of the most effective jump scares I've ever seen in a film. And it destroys me every time. It's amazing. But then there's other films, don't want to name, but it feels cheaper. And I think that there's an example in this film where I expected a cell phone ring to be loud at one point, and it wasn't. And that would have been where a lot of filmmakers, I think, would have put a specific cell phone ring at a moment to get that sort of double scare, the kind of, you've already released the tension, now we're going to get you one more time. And you don't do that here, which I think is part of the reason it doesn't feel cheap. If you know exactly kind of what I'm talking about with that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. What about the casting? Because you're hanging your hat on one performance here that if it doesn't work, your movie doesn't work really at the end.
So I had worked with the actress Quinn Jackson before. I worked with her. I did a very low budget, micro budget feature. My feature directorial debut was called A Cuts Deep, that came out 4 years ago. It was released by Dark Sky Films.
Mm-hmm.
It got buried a little bit because it came out during the pandemic, so there wasn't much, but her performance was so strong in that that, and like when, no matter if anyone, if someone even had a bad review, they still talk about how amazing she was.
Yeah.
And so I just knew I needed someone I could trust. We only had one day to shoot the film, so I know I like needed someone that we didn't have to have like a warm up process. Like a lot of times you have to like figure out how each other work and like kind of like build up to get these bigger performances. So I knew I could just kind of drop her in. And we did a day of rehearsals as well, so we were like ready to go.
And can you talk a little bit about again, not to give things away, but the effects makeup that's in this, because it actually looks really good, especially for something that I assume is pretty much no budget. And I think that you look much better than something that was made, kind of just out of pocket for something like this.
Yes, I went with this special makeup effects artist named Jared Balog, who I'd worked with before. I had produced another feature called Uncle Peckerhead that had heavy makeup.
Yeah.
And he did the makeup for that. And so I used them in a couple other shorts and my feature. And worked with him pretty closely on like trying to figure out what the design of it is. I wanted kind of more of like organic decaying ghost. And we also wanted to like not just go with contact lenses for the actor. So what we actually did was like a full kind of mask over the actor's head, and then actually they were like fake eyes that were popped, half of fake eyes that were popped over his eyes, so you couldn't really see. But it created a much more like terrifying look to the creature than just to have the actor. And yeah, and
it works. It absolutely works. And despite how personal the story is and that it feels, there is something in the end of this that felt almost like something out of an anthology film, like a creep show or something like that. It reminded me of the Raft in a way, if you're familiar with that. It's just the way that it ends there. And I wasn't sure if you were sharing DNA there or that was just a happy accident.
That's definitely a happy accident. But that was always my favorite growing up.
It has not aged well. Don't get me wrong. I loved it when I was a kid, but it's something that when I've gone back and watched it as an adult, it's, oh, Jesus, man, what was I doing watching that thing? So,
yeah, the black trash bag. But that last shot with the wave coming over is still a perfect shot.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah, it's more of the consent elements of the film that really just have not aged well with that one, where you look at it and go, ooh, man, yeah, 80s were definitely a different time. Yeah. So, but with your film though, the inspiration for this idea of these numbers that we have in our cell phones that we don't want to let go of. I mean, I know that feeling. My dad passed last year, and it's one of those things that, I haven't deleted that contact from there. And there's just, the couple of voicemails that you still have that I'll listen to from time to time that are just kind of floating out there. And I can't bring myself to get rid of those. And I don't know that I ever will. And it's kind of a new way that we hold, vigils to some degree is in our cell phones, which is very strange.
Yeah, absolutely. And sorry to hear that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah. It's not why I was bringing that up in any sense like that. It is this something that is I think a very new thing, that we have this little connection to people that's always available to some degree, and it's something that's I know that it's something that as time goes on, I value those messages more, and I'm glad that they're there. And it's just something you can kind of go hang out with them for a second, and you feel like calling sometimes, and it's just, eventually that number is going to get reassigned and it won't go anywhere. So yeah, it's I know when the plan was canceled, so it's, those elements of it, but yeah, it's a pretty interesting thing that we have right now. Can you talk a little bit about the film's release, playing at Hollyshorts? How are you feeling about that?
Feel really good. Yeah, so it's happening as LA premiere at Hollyshorts this weekend. And then it's going to be playing more festivals kind of up until the end of October. And then then it'll be on a couple of streaming services. I don't know if I can actually talk about it yet, but so yeah, all kind of the festival they'll kind of ratchet up the festival screenings up until the end of October, and then hopefully it'll be more.
That's great.
People. Yeah.
I'm so happy that short films, specifically horror films, can have that. Short horror films can have that afterlife now, because it used to be it was just you would go to a film festival, and there was the horror block, a horror shorts block, or you'd go to a horror film festival and they would have the block of them. That would be it, and that's the only place that you could see these things. There were some wonderful films that were out there. Maybe if the director made it somewhere someday, it'd be like, oh, here's the short film that this was inspired by, that led to the film. You could see it as a Blu-ray feature or DVD feature, but now the streamers have started picking these up, and AMC had that whole thing or I'm sorry, I guess it was Hulu last year did that thing where they were showing all the horror shorts around Halloween. Shudder has them on there all the time. Screenbox has them. So I love that they, will curate these and collect these, because there's just, I think, some wonderful voices that you can find if you're looking for up and coming filmmakers. That shorts are a wonderful way to do it. And some stories should be short. Some short stories deserve to be 189 minutes long. Some of them really should be 3 minutes long, and that's what they call for. And I'm glad that they have that chance to maybe get to a wider audience at this point. Do you personally prefer, or do you like short form narrative storytelling?
I mean, it's such a different form of storytelling than features and writing features. But yeah, there's something beautiful in just like this perfectly crafted bite-sized story. It's its own its own unique art form in a way, totally separate from feature filmmaking. And yeah, it's been really great. Some companies have been stepping up lately and like really supporting shorts, which is nice.
It's great.
When I started out, there were so many films I've seen at festivals that I have never seen again or heard about, or
Yeah, it's always the first time you go to a festival and you see something like, oh, this one will get everywhere. Everyone's going to see this. In 6 months, is going to be the movie that everybody in the country is talking about. And then you never hear about it again. It's one of those things where I don't even know at this point what causes things to make it and not make it. But I'm glad that it seems like there's more outlets for these new voices to be found and to be heard. And it's just rising above that white noise. And I think you got something really special here with this one. I had a great time with it. One of the things that I really like about it, despite the fact that it is 6 minutes long, compact, tight storytelling, but I do feel like there's an entire world around this that you knew. I feel like while I'm not privy to the rules of this world, I feel like you know what those rules are. Is that correct? Or did you just say, I can let the imagination of the audience paint it?
No, absolutely. There's whole stories there that are not being told. There was much more to it at first, and then I really kind of like boiled it down to what's the most effective story and how simple can I make it. But yeah, there's more backstory behind the phone call. There's more backstory behind going out to the woods with her girlfriend. So there is definitely a whole world there, and I think it definitely helps kind of inform every little detail and decision that you're making. And then when you make all those decisions, even if they're not apparent on screen, a lot of it's still going to come through in that world and that environment that's built, and hopefully feels lived in and bigger.
I think you can feel intention is what ends up happening, that this was a part of this is how this moment had to happen, that it doesn't feel like, well, we'll just point a camera and something might happen. Where you can feel this does feel like there was something that was trimmed down to the absolute, there was no fat on this. There's nothing extra. There's not any, I don't think you could pull a frame from this thing. It's that tight, the filmmaking here. And there's other films that, despite being 6 minutes, 10 minutes long, feel like they're kind of meandering in that time frame. I feel like you are really boiled down to the most efficient version of the story that you could tell, where it still carries weight. Still scary, but it still carries a little the emotional impact that you could have in this amount of time. So I think you made something really special here, man.
Appreciate it. And yeah, that's just what I love in watching films. And especially like after having made a bunch of other shorts and like sitting there with an audience, as soon as you're not giving them something intentional and something that's pushing the story forward, even if it's every shot has to be pushing it forward, every action. As soon as you don't give that, you can always feel kind of the energy deflate in a room.
Yeah.
And so I always want to make sure that like that screening experience is something that's exciting and engaging.
Well, it's almost, it works in the same, this is something I've definitely said before, but I think it works in the same sort of way that stand-up comedy works. It's like, it's a punchline setup, kind of, you're essentially setting the world up and then you pay off. And that's all you really need in a short film. Then you have other short films that'll decide to try to tell a 3-act structure in 15 minutes and it just feels overly crammed. And or they'll just take way too much time getting to that point where, if the voice, the people, I think we give more of an allowance because, if there's somebody whose work you're familiar with or, it's a face that you're familiar with or anything like that, you might be willing to hang out with them for a few minutes longer. But it's kind of like you're walking into a club and it's a stand-up comedian you never heard of before. They have 30 seconds to impress you or the audience is going to just go away. You're going to lose them that quickly. And I think you grab them pretty quick here, man. My wife had her phone out and she literally was like, what the hell is going on? And put down the phone and just engaged with this. So that's something it can be difficult when I'm making her watch this stuff with me to get her to do. So she was on board, man. You won her over.
Thanks. Appreciate it. But it was funny. This is the first one I've really done where when I was doing test screening with friends and my wife, I was fully just watching them watch it and just like making sure that every moment was grabbing them when all the scares were working. And it
does. And I definitely recommend if anybody's thinking about going to Hollyshorts this weekend and checking out the horror block, make sure you check this out because I think that I would love to see this in a crowded theater. I'm really sad I'm not going to be there. You're playing with some good films also, but I would love to see this one specifically with a crowded house and just kind of there's 2 moments I just want to just watch the theater react to it because I think you're going to get a big reaction. So I'm really excited for you.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Dude, thank you so much for taking the time to do this today, man. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure to meet you. Hopefully we'll get to chat again sometime because I really like this work. I want more. Greedy American consumer. I want more of your stuff because I like this. You did a good job, man. Congrats.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Nicholas. Nice to meet you, man.
All right, you too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
We used some bridges that we wired and blown. That time's over now. So over now. I can't say I'm sad to see it go. That's over now. So over now. So what you doing in a couple of years? On a Saturday. Most people never get what you've always been, always been, always been. And most people never get